A girl was left home alone at Christmas. When her mother returns, she is shocked by what she sees. On a quiet suburban street in Newton, Massachusetts, number 27, Maple Street stood out from the rest, not for its architecture, which followed the neighborhood's standard colonial style but for the constant buzz emanating from its windows. It was there that the Miller family resided, an effervescent mix of cultures and personalities that never let a day go by without some adventure. Anya Miller, a Parisian woman in her early 40s with hazel eyes and wavy brown hair, had moved to the United States almost 2 decades prior to study art. It was during an exhibition at a local gallery that she met Jack Miller, a charming American lawyer from Connecticut, also in his early 40s, with piercing blue eyes and a captivating smile. What began as a heated discussion about the meaning of an abstract painting ended in a romance that defied oceans and cultures. Now, 15 years and 5 children later, Anya and Jack led what they affectionately called their international circus. Catherine, the 15-year-old firstborn, was the image of her mother, with her passion for art and French fashion. Liam, 13, had inherited his father's wit and dreamed of becoming a great international lawyer. Sophia, 10, was a perfect blend of the two, with French charm and American determination. Ethan, 8, was the family scientist, always conducting experiments that frequently resulted in minor household disasters. And finally, little Zoe, 6, was the hurricane of the house, speaking a curious mix of languages that only the family could fully understand. It was Christmas Eve, and the Miller house was in an uproar. This year, the whole family would spend the holidays in France, at Grandma Beatrice Miller's house, in a small town outside of Paris. What should have been a simple organization for a 2-week trip had turned into chaos worthy of a reality show. "Mum, where's my red sweater?" Catherine yelled from upstairs. "Boss, I need it to match my new scarf." "In the laundry room, honey," Anya replied, trying to balance a pile of presents while furiously typing on her cell phone, confirming taxi reservations for the airport. Jack, in turn, was in the living room, surrounded by a fortress of open suitcases, trying to figure out how to make 5 children and 2 adults travel with only the baggage allowed by the airline. "Liam, do you really need to take all these books?" Jack asked, lifting a heavy stack of international law volumes. "Dad, what if Grandma wants to discuss the legal implications of Brexit?" Liam replied seriously. Jack sighed, but couldn't help but smile. "Son, I think Grandma will be more interested in knowing if you're eating well." Sophia entered the room carrying her violin. "Dad, can I take my instrument?" "I want to play Grandma the new song I learned." "Of course, my little one," Jack replied. "But you'll have to carry it yourself, okay?" At that moment, a crash from the kitchen made everyone freeze for a second. "Ethan," Anya's voice echoed. "What are you doing?" The 8-year-old appeared at the living room door, covered in flour from head to toe. "I was just trying to make cookies to take. The recipe said to mix the flour, but I think I overdid it a bit." Anya appeared behind him, alternating between laughter and sighs. "Honey, that's very sweet of you, but I'm sure we'll find wonderful cookies in France." While Jack helped Ethan clean himself up, Zoe ran into the room dragging a suitcase almost bigger than herself. "I'm ready," she announced proudly. Curious, Jack opened his youngest daughter's suitcase, only to find an eclectic collection of toys, coloring books, and, for some inexplicable reason, a frying pan. "Zoe, honey, why are you taking a frying pan?" Anya asked, trying not to laugh. "To make pancakes for Grandma," the girl replied with a gap-toothed grin. The whole family burst out laughing, the tension of the preparations momentarily forgotten. The sun had barely risen on the horizon when the Miller house came to life. It was the long-awaited travel day, and the hustle and bustle took over every room. In the master bedroom, Anya paced back and forth, checking for the 10th time if she had packed all the essentials. "Jack, have you seen my phone charger?" she yelled, rummaging through the bedside table drawers. Jack appeared at the bedroom door with a suitcase in each hand and a look of slight despair on his face. "Honey, I think it's already in your purse. Have you seen the tickets?" "I can't find them anywhere." In the next room, Catherine and Liam were vying for space in front of the mirror, trying to fix their hair while arguing about who would get the window seat on the plane. "I'm the oldest. I have the right to the window," Catherine argued. Only by 2 years, it's not fair, Liam retorted, pushing his sister aside. Sophia, always the peacemaker, tried to calm things down while packing her violin in its case. You can take turns during the trip, can't you? Amidst all this confusion, little Zoe, only 6 years old, wandered the hallways of the house, hugging her favorite teddy bear. Her eyes sparkled with excitement at the thought of the trip, but there was also a touch of anxiety in her gaze. It was her first time on a plane, and the stories her older siblings had told about ears popping and scary turbulence had left her a little apprehensive. "Mommy, is the plane very high?" Zoe asked, tugging on Anya's blouse. Anya, distracted by her frantic search for lost items, just muttered a "Don't worry, honey," before running to the bathroom, suddenly remembering that she had forgotten to grab the toothbrushes. Feeling a little lost amidst the rush, Zoe decided to do what she always did when she wanted to distract herself: play hide and seek. With a mischievous smile on her lips, she climbed the stairs towards the attic, her favorite hiding place. The attic was a fascinating place for Zoe, filled with old boxes, furniture covered in sheets, and mysterious objects. It was the perfect setting for her imaginary adventures. She snuck between the stacks of boxes, finding a cozy corner behind an old dresser. "Guess they'll never find me here," she thought, giggling softly. Meanwhile, downstairs, the chaos continued. Jack finally found the tickets. They were in his pants pocket the whole time, and was now struggling to close the overflowing suitcase. "Kids, it's time! We have to go now or we'll miss the flight," he yelled, his voice echoing through the house. Catherine and Liam ran down the stairs, almost bumping into Anya, who was carrying a pile of coats just in case. "Where's Zoe?" Anya asked, looking around. "I thought she was with you," Jack replied, frowning. "I saw her in the boys' room about 20 minutes ago," Sophia said, already at the door with her backpack on. "She must be in the car already," Ethan concluded, eager to leave. With the clock ticking against them and the fear of missing the flight growing with each passing second, the Miller family did one last quick sweep of the house, calling for Zoe. Hearing no response and assuming she must already be in the car, after all, she was so excited about the trip, they decided it was time to go. Come on. We have to get to the airport at least 2 hours early," Jack insisted, pushing everyone out of the house. With one last look back, Anya closed the door, the click of the lock echoing through the now silent house. In the attic, Zoe, lulled by the cozy warmth of her hiding place and the tiredness of a night poorly slept with excitement, had fallen fast asleep, hugging her teddy bear. Time passed, and the sun was already high in the sky when Zoe finally began to stir. Her little eyes opened slowly, taking a moment to adjust to the light filtering through the cracks in the roof. "Mommy," she called, her voice still sleepy. Silence. Zoe sat up, rubbing her eyes and looking around, confused. Where was everyone? Why hadn't anyone come looking for her? With hesitant steps, she descended the attic stairs, her teddy bear clutched tightly against her chest. The house was strangely quiet. There was no sound of the TV that her father always turned on in the morning, nor the smell of the coffee her mother made. "Daddy? Catherine? Liam?" she called again, her voice echoing through the empty hallways. A feeling of dread began to grow in her small chest when she reached the living room. The suitcases that were previously scattered on the floor were gone. On the coffee table, there was a hastily written note. "Zoe, if you read this, call Grandma immediately. Don't worry, we're on our way." Tears began to well up in Zoe's eyes as reality hit her. She had been left behind, alone. With trembling hands, she picked up the living room landline, pressing the buttons for Grandma's number that her mother had made her memorize in case of an emergency. As the phone rang, Zoe looked out the window. The family car wasn't in the driveway. The street was quiet, with only a few leaves dancing in the wind. The feeling of loneliness was overwhelming. "Hello?" Her grandmother's familiar voice on the other end of the line was like a warm blanket enveloping Zoe. "Grandma," Zoe sobbed, tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. "They forgot me. I'm home alone." Logan International Airport in Boston bustled with the typical holiday rush. Hurried families dragged colorful suitcases, suited executives rushed to their flights, and excited children hopped between stressed adults. Amidst this organized chaos, the Miller family made their way to the check-in counter. A procession of suitcases, backpacks, and anxious faces. "Passports, everyone," Jack announced. Reaching out to collect the documents from each family member, Catherine handed hers over with a dramatic sigh. Liam almost dropped his while trying to balance his books. Sophia frantically searched her violin case, and Ethan was distracted counting the baggage carousels. Anya, with disheveled hair and pronounced dark circles, did a quick count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Her eyes suddenly widened. "Where's Zoe?" Jack, who was about to hand the passports to the check-in agent, froze. "What?" "She was right here." A tense silence fell over the family as everyone looked around, expecting to see little Zoe emerge from behind a suitcase or pillar, but she was nowhere to be found. "Zoe!" Anya yelled, her voice lost in the airport bustle. "Zoe!" Panic began to set in. Catherine dropped her makeup bag, scattering lipsticks and brushes across the floor. Liam, always the pragmatist, was already formulating theories. Maybe she went to the bathroom. Or maybe she was abducted by aliens, Ethan suggested, earning annoyed glances from everyone. Jack tried to remain calm, although his pale face betrayed his worry. "Okay, let's get organized. Catherine, Liam, you check the restrooms. Sophia, stay here with Ethan and the luggage. Anya and I will talk to security." As the children dispersed to carry out their tasks, Anya grabbed Jack's arm, her eyes filled with tears. "Jack, what if... "Don't think about that now," Jack interrupted, trying to sound confident. "We'll find her." The next few minutes were a blur of frantic activity. Jack ran from one place to another, talking to security guards, checking nearby shops and cafes. Anya, with trembling hands, tried to call the neighbors, praying that someone had seen Zoe. "Hello? Mrs. Johnson? It's Anya Miller. Please, have you seen Zoe this morning?" Anya's voice trembled as she spoke, her French accent more pronounced due to stress. On the other end of the line, Mrs. Johnson, an elderly lady who lived next door, sounded confused. "Zoe? No, dear, I haven't seen her. Weren't you traveling today?" Anya choked back a sob. "Yes, but we can't find her. She's not at the airport with us." There was a moment of shocked silence before Mrs. Johnson replied, "Oh my God." "Have you called the police?" "No, not yet. We're waiting, hoping she'll show up." Anya could barely form the words, fear tightening her throat. Meanwhile, Catherine and Liam returned, both breathless and with defeated expressions. "Nothing in the restrooms, Mom," Catherine reported, her voice trembling slightly. Jack returned at that moment, looking 10 years older than when he had left just 15 minutes ago. "Airport security is on alert. They're checking the security cameras now." Sophia, who had stayed with Ethan, hugged her younger brother, who now seemed to have lost all his usual energy. "What if we left her at home?" she whispered, almost afraid to voice the thought. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone looked at each other, the horrifying realization dawning on their faces. "My God," Anya whispered, dropping her cell phone from her trembling hands. How could we?" Jack, feeling the weight of guilt crushing his chest, tried to maintain his composure. "We're not sure yet. Let's call home. Maybe she woke up and..." Before he could finish the sentence, Anya's cell phone rang. She picked it up from the floor so quickly that she almost dropped it again. "Hello, Zoe? Honey?" The voice on the other end wasn't Zoe's, but Mrs. Beaumont's, the elderly neighbor who was rarely seen outside her house. "Anya, it's Beatrice." "I have Zoe." A collective sigh of relief echoed among the Miller family, followed immediately by a wave of renewed guilt. "Is she there? Is she okay?" Anya asked, tears now flowing freely. "Yes, she's fine. A little scared, but safe. I found her alone at home and..." Anya couldn't hear the rest. She handed the phone to Jack, unable to speak through the sobs that now shook her body. Jack, trying to keep his voice steady, spoke to Mrs. Beaumont, thanking her profusely and assuring her they would return immediately. Hanging up the phone, he turned to his family, his face a mixture of relief and shame. "Zoe's at home. She was left behind. Mrs. Beaumont found her and is taking care of her." The relief was palpable, but it was quickly replaced by a wave of guilt that seemed to crush everyone. As the family prepared to return home, each carried the weight of what they had almost done, and the knowledge that they would have much to explain and make up for when they finally reunited with little Zoe. The silence of the empty house felt strange to Zoe. After the initial tears and the frightened call to her grandmother, she found herself alone for the first time in her 6 years of life. The morning sun streamed through the windows, creating golden patterns on the living room floor, and for a brief moment, a mischievous thought crossed her mind. She had the whole house to herself. "Mr. Snuggles," she said to her teddy bear, squeezing him tight, "I think we can do everything Mommy never lets us do." With hesitant steps at first, but soon more confident, Zoe began her adventure through the house. First stop, the kitchen. Climbing onto a chair she dragged to the counter, she reached the cookie jar that was normally out of her reach. "Special breakfast," she announced to Mr. Snuggles, feeling very grown up. With the cookie jar under one arm and her faithful teddy bear in the other, Zoe wandered through the house, leaving a trail of chocolate crumbs. In Catherine's room, she experimented with the lipsticks her older sister guarded so zealously. "Dry lipstick," she murmured, remembering what her mother called it, as she drew a crooked smile that extended beyond the boundaries of her lips. In the boys' room, she jumped on the unmade beds, something she always wanted to do but was never allowed. "Higher!" she yelled to herself, jumping higher and higher, her ruffled dress floating in the air. But the fun began to lose its luster when she tried to turn on the television and couldn't make the remote work. The buttons looked different than usual, and the batteries had fallen out when she accidentally dropped it. "It's okay," she told Mr. Snuggles. "We can play other things." Real panic began to set in when she tried to use the phone again. Her little fingers pressed the buttons, but she couldn't remember Mommy's cell phone number. The paper with the emergency numbers was too high on the kitchen wall, and even dragging a chair, she couldn't reach it. "Mommy," she tried speaking into the phone after dialing random numbers. "Daddy," only the busy signal answered, making her heart clench a little more with each failed attempt. As the hours passed, the shadows in the house began to shift. The sun, which earlier created cheerful patterns on the floor, now cast long, frightening shadows across the walls. The dark corners seemed deeper, and the normal creaks of the house sounded louder and more menacing. "Mr. Snuggles," Zoe whispered, huddled on the living room sofa, "do you think they'll come back?" The teddy bear just stared at her with its button eyes, offering no answer. A noise from next door made her jump. It was just the neighbor's dog barking, but to Zoe it could have been a monster trying to get in. She ran to her parents' room, seeking refuge in the place where she always felt safe. Her mother's scent still lingered in the air, and Zoe buried her face in the pillow, trying to capture that comforting smell. The tears, which had dried during her adventures around the house, returned with full force. "I want my mommy," she sobbed, feeling small and vulnerable. Her parents' room, usually a safe haven, seemed large and scary without them. The shadows of the trees outside danced on the wall, creating shapes that her imagination transformed into frightening creatures. Zoe decided to build a fort, as her father had taught her to ward off fear. She dragged blankets and pillows under the bedside table, creating a small refuge. Inside, with Mr. Snuggles clutched in her arms, she tried to distract herself by singing the lullabies her mother used to sing. "Ja twinkle, twinkle, little star." Her trembling voice echoed in the empty room, making her feel even more alone. The silence between the notes of the song seemed deafening. Hunger began to gnaw at her, but she was afraid to go back to the kitchen alone. The cookies she had eaten in the morning were long gone, and she didn't know how to prepare real food. "Maybe we should sleep," she told Mr. Snuggles. "Like Sleeping Beauty. When we wake up, they'll be back." But sleep wouldn't come. Every noise made her jump. The ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator in the distance, the wind in the windows. Everything seemed louder, scarier in the empty house. It was then that she heard footsteps on the porch. Her heart pounded. Were her parents back? Or was it something more sinister, like the monsters from the stories Liam loved to tell? "Zoe," a soft voice called from the other side of the door. "Zoe, honey, are you there?" It was Mrs. Beaumont, the elderly neighbor who sometimes waved to her through the window. Zoe hesitated, remembering her parents' warnings about not opening the door to anyone. But Mrs. Beaumont's kind voice was like a beacon in the darkness of her loneliness. With cautious steps, still clutching Mr. Snuggles, Zoe emerged from her makeshift fort. Through the living room window, she could see Mrs. Beaumont's familiar figure on the porch, her kind face etched with concern. For the first time since waking up alone, Zoe felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to face this scary day completely alone. "I'm here," she replied softly, walking towards the door. As she approached the entrance, Zoe felt a mix of relief and apprehension. She knew she shouldn't open the door to strangers, but Mrs. Beaumont wasn't exactly a stranger, was she? Besides, the idea of not being alone anymore was too tempting to resist. With her hand on the doorknob, Zoe hesitated for a moment. What if it was a trap? What if behind the door wasn't Mrs. Beaumont, but one of the monsters that populated her nightmares? "Zoe, it's all right." Mrs. Beaumont's gentle voice came again. "I know your parents taught you not to open the door, but I'm here to help. I called them, and they're coming back." Those words were like a balm to Zoe's frightened heart. With one last look at Mr. Snuggles, as if seeking his approval, she finally turned the knob. The door opened, revealing Mrs. Beaumont, her grey hair perfectly styled and a warm smile on her face. "Oh, ma petite," she said, kneeling down to Zoe's height. "You must be scared. Let's go inside and wait for your parents together, shall we?" Zoe nodded, tears of relief welling up in her eyes. As Mrs. Beaumont entered and closed the door behind her, the little girl finally felt that the nightmare of loneliness was coming to an end. Now, all that remained was to wait for her family's return, with the certainty that she was no longer alone in this big, empty house. The taxi sliced through the Boston streets towards the Miller house, carrying a family devastated by guilt. As Anya stared out the window, silent tears streaming down her face, memories of the past few months began to flood her mind, like pieces of a puzzle finally falling into place. 3 months earlier. "Mum, you promised to come to my art show," Catherine yelled, throwing her paintbrush in the sink of the makeshift studio in the garage. "Aunt, this is the 3rd time you've cancelled." Anya, balancing little Ethan on one arm while trying to prevent Zoe from eating paint with the other, felt her heart clench. "Honey, I'm so sorry. Your father is in Chicago for that important case and—" "It's always like this," Catherine interrupted, tears of frustration in her eyes. "Tayo, ever since Ethan and Zoe were born, you never have time for me." The garage door slammed shut, leaving Anya alone with the little ones, the echo of Catherine's words reverberating in her ears. "Present. How didn't we notice?" Anya whispered to herself in the taxi. Jack squeezed her hand, his own thoughts wandering to a particularly difficult night just a few weeks ago. 2 weeks earlier. "Dad, you missed my international law presentation," Liam said quietly as Jack arrived home after another long day at the office. "I was the only student whose father wasn't there." Jack dropped his briefcase on the floor, exhaustion and guilt weighing on his shoulders. "Liam, son, the trial went on longer than expected, and—" "You always say that," Liam replied, his voice laden with disappointment. "You know, sometimes I wish you were just a normal dad, not a famous lawyer." "Present." Jack ran a hand over his face, remembering how many times he had promised to be more present, only to break those promises in the name of another important case. Sophia, sitting between her brothers in the taxi, recalled her own silent frustration 1 month earlier. "Look, Mum, I got a perfect score on my violin recital," Sophia exclaimed, entering the kitchen with her report card. "That's wonderful, my little one," Anya replied distractedly, while wiping porridge off Zoe's face and trying to stop Ethan from dismantling the blender. Sophia stood there, her smile slowly fading, until she finally placed the report card on the table and left the kitchen without saying another word. No one noticed. "Present. We were all so blind," Sophia murmured, hugging her knees. In another flashback, Anya remembered a recent conversation with her own mother in France. 1 week earlier. "My daughter, you look exhausted," Beatrice Miller said through the computer screen. "I'm tired, Mom," Anya admitted, running her hands through her messy hair. "Our Jack is always working. Catherine is getting more and more rebellious. Liam shuts himself up in his books. Sophia barely speaks to me. And the little ones, my God, they need so much attention. And you, Anya, who takes care of you? The question went unanswered, interrupted by the sound of something breaking upstairs. Present. The taxi stopped at a traffic light, and Jack observed his family through the reflection of the window. Catherine, normally so lively, was quiet and pale. Liam had put aside his precious books, his face etched with worry. Sophia was hugging Ethan, who for the first time seemed to have lost his infinite energy. Another flashback emerged, this time from just 2 days ago. Jack, we need to talk about Christmas, Anya said late at night after the children had gone to bed. Not now, my love, Jack replied, his eyes fixed on his laptop. I have to finish these documents for tomorrow. It's always the same thing, Anya exploded, slamming her hand on the table. Always the same thing. Don't you see what's happening to our family? Jack finally looked up, surprised by the outburst. Guys, what do you mean? Catherine is drifting further and further away. Liam only talks about law because he thinks that's how he'll get your attention, Sophia. My God, did you even notice that she cut her hair last week? Present. The taxi turned onto Maple Street, and the reality of the situation hit them with full force. They had forgotten Zoe, their little Zoe. How could they have let things get to this point? We're here, the driver announced, stopping in front of the Miller house. Before getting out of the taxi, Jack held Anya's arm. This has to change, he said, his voice choked with emotion. All of us, we need to change. Catherine wiped away a tear. I should have paid more attention to her, instead of getting mad about not being the center of attention anymore. Liam nodded. And I should have been a more present brother, instead of hiding in my books. We all failed, Zoe, Sophia whispered. And each other, too. Anya looked at her house, where her youngest was waiting. Yes, but maybe this is a sign. Such warning that we need to rebuild our family. Jack paid the driver and gathered his family in a tight hug before heading to the door. It doesn't matter how many cases I win in court, he said, if I lose my family in the process. As they walked to the door, each member of the Miller family carried not only the weight of guilt for forgetting Zoe, but also the painful awareness of how they had drifted apart from each other. The tensions, the unspoken hurts, the neglect disguised as routine. All of this had contributed to this moment. Anya, with her hand on the doorknob, hesitated. What if she doesn't forgive us? Jack placed his hand over hers. Then we'll have to work to earn her forgiveness, all of us. Catherine stepped forward. We can start by being honest. About everything, Liam agreed. No more secrets or bottled-up resentment. Sophia, holding Ethan's hand, added, and we'll listen to each other, really listen. Ethan, with a wisdom beyond his years, said, we can have family game nights every week. Anya smiled through her tears, looking at each of her children and her husband. You're right. This is our chance to start over. With a deep breath, she finally opened the door. The moment of truth had arrived. Now, standing before their own door, they knew they would find not only Zoe on the other side, but also the chance for a new beginning. The question was, would they be ready to make the necessary changes? As they stepped inside, the smell of something sweet in the air and the distant sound of laughter caught them by surprise. Perhaps, Anya thought, the healing journey had already begun, in a way none of them could have predicted. Mrs. Beatrice Beaumont had lived at 29 Maple Street for over 4 decades, although few neighbors knew her story. A 75-year-old Frenchwoman, she preferred the solitude of her Victorian home, observing the world through its delicate lace-curtained windows. Her silver hair, always perfectly coiffed, and her meticulously maintained garden were the only visible evidence of her existence to most residents of the street. On that Christmas Eve morning, Beatrice followed her usual routine. Sitting in her favorite armchair by the front window, a steaming cup of lavender tea in her wrinkled hands, she observed the activity at the neighboring house with particular interest. Very strange, she murmured to herself, adjusting her gold-rimmed glasses. She knew the Miller family's schedule well. Every morning, Jack left at 7:30 a.m. in his black sedan. Anya took the children to school at 8:15 a.m., except for Zoe, who was still in kindergarten and had a different schedule. Little Zoe always waved to her through the window, a gesture that secretly brightened her solitary days. But today, something was different. The usual commotion next door had reached extraordinary levels since dawn. Suitcases being loaded, shouts in English and French echoing through the quiet street, the sound of doors slamming repeatedly. The Christmas trip, Beatrice remembered, having overheard conversations in the garden about the family's trip to France. She watched as the cars departed, carrying the hurried family. Silence returned to Maple Street, but something didn't feel right. Years of solitude had sharpened her senses to the small changes in the neighborhood's rhythm. 2 hours passed, and Beatrice remained uneasy. That's when she noticed a subtle movement through the second-floor window of the Miller house. A small shadow passed quickly, like a startled bird. "My goodness," she whispered, rising from her armchair with surprising agility for her age. "It can't be." Putting on her navy blue coat and adjusting her silk scarf around her neck, Beatrice left her house for the first time in weeks. The cold December air nipped at her cheeks as she crossed the small path separating the two houses. As she approached the Miller's door, she heard a sound that made her heart clench. A child's almost inaudible sobs coming from inside the house. "Zoe?" she called softly, knocking on the door. "It's Mrs. Beaumont, my dear." The sobs stopped for a moment, followed by hesitant footsteps. "Mrs. Beaumont," a trembling little voice replied from the other side of the door. They forgot me." The elderly French woman's heart broke upon hearing the despair in the little girl's voice. "Yes, dear, I know. Can you open the door for me? I promise. I'll help you." There was a moment of hesitation before the doorknob slowly turned. The door opened, revealing Zoe, her eyes red from crying, still in her unicorn pajamas, clutching her inseparable teddy bear. "Oh, my little one," Beatrice whispered, kneeling with some difficulty to be at the girl's height. "Come here." Zoe practically threw herself into her neighbor's arms, the tears starting again with full force. "I slept in the attic, Mrs. Beaumont, and when I woke up, everyone was gone." Beatrice hugged the little girl, feeling her small body tremble with sobs. "Shh, dear, it's all right now. Mrs. Beaumont is here." Entering the house, Beatrice noticed the signs of the chaotic morning. Cookie crumbs on the floor, poorly applied lipstick on Zoe's little face, toys scattered in a desperate attempt at distraction. "Come," she said gently, guiding Zoe to the sofa. "Let's call your parents and then, how about we make some cookies? Did you know I was a baker in Paris?" Zoe's eyes widened, momentarily forgetting her fear. "Really?" Beatrice smiled, stroking the girl's messy hair. "Yes, and I'm sure your parents will be very happy to know you're safe with me." While making the necessary calls, Beatrice observed Zoe, who now held her hand as if it were an anchor amidst the storm. The elderly French woman, who had lived alone with her memories for so long, felt something awaken in her heart. A purpose, a connection she had long forgotten. "Your parents are coming back, my little one," she announced after hanging up the phone. "But until then, how about we turn this scary day into a French adventure?" A small smile began to form on Zoe's face. "So how can we make chocolate chip cookies?" "Chocolate chip cookies," Beatrice chuckled softly. "But of course, and I'll teach you all the words in French while we bake." In the kitchen, Beatrice helped Zoe climb onto a stool so she could reach the counter. Together, they began mixing the ingredients, with Beatrice patiently guiding Zoe's inexperienced little hands. "A flour is farine in French," Beatrice explained, as Zoe tried not to spill the contents of the cup. "And sugar is sucre." Zoe repeated the words, her pronunciation improving with each attempt, her initial fear dissipating with each new word learned and each shared laugh with Mrs. Beaumont. As the cookies baked, filling the house with a comforting aroma, Beatrice told stories of her youth in Paris, of how she learned to make breads and pastries with her grandmother, and of how she ended up in Boston so many years ago. Zoe listened, fascinated, her eyes shining with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. "Don't you miss France, Mrs. Beaumont?" The elderly woman paused for a moment, a distant look in her eyes. "Sometimes, my dear. But you know, home is where the heart is, and my heart has found a home here." At that moment, two lonely souls, one very young and the other already well-lived, found comfort in each other. The house that minutes before seemed scary to Zoe was now filled with laughter, stories, and the sweet smell of freshly baked cookies. When they finally heard the sound of a car parking in front of the house, Zoe ran to the window, her face a mixture of anxiety and relief. Beatrice followed her calmly, placing a comforting hand on the girl's shoulder. "It's all right, my little one," she said softly. "Your family is here, and remember, you were very brave today." As they watched the Miller family rush to the front door, Beatrice reflected on how sometimes angels appear disguised as accidents of fate. This Christmas, which had begun with fear and loneliness, had transformed into an opportunity for new bonds and deeper understanding. The Miller's kitchen, usually a scene of morning rush, was now filled with the sweet aroma of freshly baked cookies and the soft sound of laughter. Mrs. Beaumont and Zoe sat at the kitchen table, a plate of still warm cookies between them, and mugs of hot chocolate warming their hands. "You know, Zoe," Mrs. Beaumont began, her eyes twinkling with distant memories, "when I was your age, I felt lonely once too." Zoe, with cookie crumbs around her mouth, looked at the elderly woman with curiosity. "Really? Were you forgotten too?" Mrs. Beaumont smiled softly. "Not exactly forgotten, but left behind in a different way. You see, when I was little, I lived on a farm outside of Paris with my parents and my 4 older brothers." "4 brothers?" Zoe exclaimed, her eyes widening. "That must have been fun." "Oh, sometimes it was," Mrs. Beaumont laughed. "But other times I felt invisible. Everyone was so much older, always busy with their own lives. One day I decided to hide in the barn to see if anyone would notice I was gone." Zoe leaned forward, completely absorbed in the story. "And what happened?" "Well, I stayed there for hours. I heard my mother call for dinner. I heard my brothers arguing about who would wash the dishes, but no one asked about me." Mrs. Beaumont paused, taking a sip of her hot chocolate. "That's when I met Monsieur Whiskers." "Who's Monsieur Whiskers?" Zoe asked, intrigued. "Ah, he was a grumpy old cat who lived in the barn. That night, he came up to me, probably curious as to why a little girl was crying in his territory. And you know what? He sat next to me and stayed there, as if keeping me company." Zoe hugged her teddy bear tighter, "Just like Mr. Snuggles does with me." Mrs. Beaumont smiled, nodding. "Exactly. Sometimes the most unexpected friends appear when we need them most." As the afternoon progressed, Mrs. Beaumont shared more stories of her childhood in France. She spoke of warm summers spent harvesting lavender with her grandmother, the mischief she got into with her brothers on the cobblestone streets of her small town, and the day she decided she wanted to be a baker. Zoe listened attentively, asking questions and laughing at the funny parts. Gradually, her own loneliness and fear were replaced by a sense of comfort and fascination. "Mrs. Beaumont," Zoe asked after a moment of silence, "why do you live alone? Where's your family?" Mrs. Beaumont's expression softened, a mixture of nostalgia and a tinge of sadness passing through her eyes. "Ah, my dear, that's a long story. You see, sometimes life takes us down paths we don't expect." She stood up, walking to the kitchen window. Zoe followed, holding her wrinkled hand. "I married young to a wonderful man named Pierre. He was a talented chef, and together we opened our own bakery in Paris. Those were happy days, filled with love and the aroma of fresh bread." Mrs. Beaumont smiled at the memory. "But Pierre got sick, and he left too soon." Zoe squeezed Mrs. Beaumont's hand, instinctively sensing the elderly woman's sadness. "After that, I needed a change. A friend invited me to visit Boston, and well, I ended up staying. I started a new life here, working in different bakeries, making new friends. My brothers stayed in France with their own families." "Don't you miss them?" Zoe asked softly. Mrs. Beaumont knelt down to Zoe's eye level. "Every day, my dear. But you know, life is made of choices. Sometimes we choose to be physically distant, but that doesn't mean we stop loving or caring." Zoe reflected for a moment. "Is that why you always stay home? Because you miss them?" The question caught Mrs. Beaumont off guard. She had never really considered the reason for her self-imposed isolation. Perhaps, she admitted. Over time, it became easier to observe the world from the window than to participate in it. But today you reminded me of something important. What? Zoe asked, curious, that we're never too old to make new friends or start new adventures. Mrs. Beaumont smiled, gently poking Zoe's nose. The two returned to the table where Mrs. Beaumont began teaching Zoe a few more French words. They laughed together at the little girl's attempts at pronunciation and made up short sentences. Mrs. Beaumont, Zoe said after a while, could you be my French grandma? The question caught Mrs. Beaumont by surprise, filling her heart with an emotion she hadn't felt in years. Oh, ma chérie, she replied, her voice choked with emotion. It would be an honor. At that moment, something shifted between them. What began as a chance encounter due to unfortunate circumstances had blossomed into a deep and meaningful connection. Mrs. Beaumont began telling Zoe about French Christmas traditions, teaching her to sing Petit Papa Noël, and explaining about New Year's Eve celebrations. Zoe, in turn, shared stories about her own family celebrations, mixing American and French traditions. As the day progressed, Mrs. Beaumont realized she hadn't felt so alive and connected in years. Zoe's presence had brought light and joy into her life in a way she hadn't expected. Zoe, Mrs. Beaumont said, holding the little girl's hands, I want you to know that even when your family returns and everything goes back to normal, you'll always have a special place here with me. Whenever you want to hear more stories, learn more French, or just have some hot chocolate, my door will always be open. Zoe's eyes filled with tears of joy. Promise, Mrs. Beaumont, can we make cookies together again? Je promets, ma petite, Mrs. Beaumont replied, wiping a tear that escaped her own eye. I promise, and we'll do much more than cookies. I'll teach you all the secrets of French pastry. The two hugged, an unlikely friendship sealed with the warmth of a sincere embrace. In that moment, the age difference disappeared, and they were just two souls who had found comfort and understanding in each other. When they finally heard the sound of cars approaching, signaling the return of the Miller family, Zoe and Mrs. Beaumont exchanged a knowing look. Are you ready to see your family, ma chérie? Mrs. Beaumont asked softly. Zoe nodded, taking Mrs. Beaumont's hand. Yes, but only if you stay with me. Always, Mrs. Beaumont replied, standing up and smoothing her dress. Let's greet them together. As they walked towards the front door, Mrs. Beaumont reflected on how fate works in mysterious ways. What began as a day of loneliness for both of them had transformed into something beautiful and unexpected. A new family had been formed, transcending age, nationality, and circumstance. And so, hand in hand, the unlikely duo prepared to face what would come next, strengthened by the bond they had created and the mutual understanding they had found. Christmas, after all, had brought a gift neither of them expected. A friendship that promised to last far beyond that unusual day. Logan International Airport buzzed with the typical Christmas Eve commotion, but for the Miller family, the world seemed to have stopped. Anya, her face pale and hands trembling, hung up the phone after speaking with Mrs. Beaumont. Jack, beside her, tried to maintain his composure, but his eyes betrayed the panic he felt. She's all right, Anya said, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Beaumont is with her. Jack nodded, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration and relief. We need to go back, now. The couple turned to their other 4 children, who were watching them with a mixture of fear and confusion. Catherine, the eldest, stepped forward. What's going on? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Where's Zoe? Anya and Jack exchanged glances, the guilt weighing heavily on their shoulders. It was Jack who finally spoke. Zoe stayed home. We forgot her. A shocked silence fell over the group. Liam, the second oldest, was the first to break it. Forgot her? How is that even possible? Anya let out a sob, covering her face with her hands. It was a terrible accident. We were all in such a rush. Accusations began to fly. Catherine accused her parents of being careless. Liam questioned how no one had noticed Zoe's absence. And the younger ones, Sophia and Ethan, began to cry, frightened by the situation. Jack tried to calm everyone down, but his own voice trembled with emotion. Enough. The important thing now is to get home as soon as possible. Anya, regaining some of her composure, began to plan frantically. We need to cancel the flights, get our luggage, find a taxi. I'll take care of that, Jack interrupted, already picking up his phone to call the airline. While Jack dealt with the practical matters, Anya found herself facing Catherine's accusing gaze. How could you, Mom? Catherine asked, her voice laden with disappointment. Zoe is just a child. Anya felt as if she had been slapped. I don't know how it happened. I thought she was with your father. He thought she was with me. Always with the excuses, Catherine murmured, turning to comfort Sophia and Ethan, who were still crying softly. Jack returned, looking exhausted. I managed to cancel the flights. They're giving us part of the money back as credit for future trips. As if we'd want to travel again after this, Liam commented sarcastically. His son's acidic comment made Jack snap. Listen here, young man, this isn't the time to... Anya intervened before the situation escalated. Stop it, both of you. This isn't going to help Zoe. The couple exchanged tense glances, years of unspoken frustration surfacing at the worst possible moment. If you weren't always so busy with work, maybe you would have noticed your daughter wasn't in the car, Anya said, her voice low but sharp. Jack retorted, hurt. And if you weren't so distracted trying to be the perfect mother to everyone, maybe you would have paid attention to who really matters. Catherine, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, decided to take charge. Enough, she shouted, surprising everyone with her authority. Mom, Dad, you both need to calm down. Fighting isn't going to get us home any faster. The 15-year-old took a deep breath before continuing. I'll take care of Sophia and Ethan. Liam, you can help with the luggage. Dad, please go find a taxi. Mum, try calling Mrs. Beaumont again and see if Zoe needs anything. For a moment, everyone was silent, surprised by Catherine's sudden maturity. Then, as if waking from a trance, they began to follow her instructions. As Jack left to find a taxi, Anya pulled Catherine into a quick hug. Thank you, honey. I don't know what we would do without you. Catherine nodded, still serious. Just, let's go get Zoe, okay? The next few minutes were a blur of activity. Liam wrestled with the suitcases. Catherine soothed the younger children with improvised stories. Anya spoke softly on the phone with Mrs. Beaumont, and Jack finally returned, announcing that he had found a taxi large enough for everyone. As they loaded the suitcases into the taxi, Anya and Jack exchanged guilty looks, both aware of the harsh words they had exchanged. John, Anya, we both stopped, unsure of how to proceed. It was Jack who finally broke the silence. We can talk about this later. Now, let's go get our daughter. Anya nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Yes, let's go get our Zoe. The taxi departed from the airport, carrying a family in crisis. The silence inside the vehicle was heavy, broken only by Sophia's occasional sobs or Ethan's worried questions. Catherine, sitting between her younger siblings, kept them distracted with word games and promises of a special Christmas when all this was over. Liam, normally engrossed in his books, stared out the window with a distant expression, clearly processing the day's events. In the front seat, Anya and Jack sat stiffly, each lost in their own thoughts and recriminations. The streets of Boston passed by in a blur, each red light seeming like an eternity. How much longer until we get there? Ethan asked for the third time in 10 minutes. Soon, honey, Anya replied automatically, her mind already at home, imagining Zoe alone and scared. Jack, noticing his wife's distress, hesitantly placed his hand over hers. Anya looked at him, surprised, Nancy, and for a moment, all the tension and accusations seemed to melt away. We'll fix this, Jack murmured, squeezing Anya's hand gently. Together. Anya nodded, silent tears streaming down her face. Yes, together. As the taxi turned onto the familiar Maple Street, the whole family leaned forward, anxious. The Miller house had never seemed so welcoming and, at the same time, so intimidating. Jack paid the driver while Anya and the children practically jumped out of the vehicle. Before they could reach the front door, it opened, revealing Mrs. Beaumont and, to everyone's relief, a smiling Zoe, with traces of chocolate around her mouth. "Mommy, Daddy," Zoe shouted, running into her parents' arms. As the family reunited in an emotional embrace on the porch, Mrs. Beaumont watched with a soft smile. The day had begun with a terrible mistake, but perhaps, she thought, it had ended exactly as it should. The afternoon progressed at the Miller house, and Zoe and Mrs. Beaumont were engrossed in their improvised Christmas preparations. The kitchen was filled with the aroma of freshly baked cookies and hot chocolate as the two worked together to create a festive atmosphere. "Mrs. Beaumont, do you think we can make a marshmallow snowman?" Zoe asked, her eyes shining with excitement. The elderly woman smiled affectionately. "Of course, my dear. Let's see what we can create with what we have here." As they shaped little snowmen with marshmallows, pretzels, and chocolate chips, Mrs. Beaumont noticed through the kitchen window that the sky was getting strangely dark for that time of day. "That's odd," she murmured, frowning. Zoe, noticing the change in Mrs. Beaumont's tone, asked, "What is it, Mrs. Beaumont?" "Nothing to worry about, dear. It just looks like the weather is changing quickly." No sooner had she finished speaking than the first snowflakes began to fall. At first, it was a beautiful, typical Christmas scene. Zoe ran to the window, enchanted by the sight. "Look, Mrs. Beaumont, it's snowing." Mrs. Beaumont smiled, but her expression soon turned to concern as she noticed the intensity with which the snow began to fall. In a matter of minutes, what had been a light snowfall transformed into a fierce blizzard. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. The snow fell in white curtains, making it almost impossible to see beyond the front yard. "My goodness, Mrs. Beaumont murmured, grabbing her phone. "I think we need to warn your parents about this." Meanwhile, at the airport, Anya and Jack were about to get into a taxi when they received Mrs. Beaumont's call. "Hello, Mrs. Beaumont. Is everything all right with Zoe?" Anya asked, the worry evident in her voice. "Zoe is fine, but we have a problem. A severe snowstorm has just started. The roads are already getting dangerous." Jack, overhearing the conversation, immediately sprang into action. "I'll check with the taxi driver." He returned moments later, looking defeated. "The authorities are advising against non-essential travel. Several roads have already been closed." Panic began to set in. Anya, with tears in her eyes, spoke back into the phone. "Mrs. Beaumont, please take good care of our Zoe. We'll do everything we can to get home as soon as possible." Back at the house, Zoe was beginning to realize that something wasn't right. "Mrs. Beaumont, will my parents be able to come back in all this snow?" Mrs. Beaumont tried to remain calm for Zoe's sake. "They'll do their best, dear. In the meantime, we have to be prepared in case the storm gets worse." The two began gathering blankets, candles, and flashlights. Mrs. Beaumont, anticipating possible problems, filled some bottles with water. At the airport, the situation was chaotic. Flights were being cancelled one after another, and hundreds of passengers were stranded. Anya and Jack, along with their other children, were desperately trying to find a way to get back home. "Maybe we can rent a car with four-wheel drive," Jack suggested. "Dad, the roads are closed. It would be too dangerous," Catherine argued, once again assuming the role of voice of reason. After hours of frustrated attempts, the family was forced to accept the inevitable. They would have to spend the night in a hotel near the airport. As they settled into their hotel rooms, Anya couldn't hold back the tears. "Our little Zoe, alone on Christmas." Jack hugged her, trying to offer comfort, although he himself was devastated. "She's not alone. She's with Mrs. Beaumont, and we'll be there as soon as it's safe to travel." Back at the Miller house, the storm continued to intensify. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the house into complete darkness. Zoe let out a frightened scream. "Mrs. Beaumont!" "I'm here, dear." Mrs. Beaumont's calm voice came from the darkness. "Oh, don't worry. We'll light some candles." With the help of the light from her cell phone, Mrs. Beaumont guided Zoe to the living room, where they began lighting candles and setting up a makeshift camp with blankets and pillows. "Look, Zoe, we can pretend we're in an igloo," Mrs. Beaumont suggested, trying to turn the frightening situation into an adventure. Despite her efforts, the cold began to seep into the house without the heating working. Zoe shivered slightly and Mrs. Beaumont wrapped her in more blankets. "How about a story to warm us up?" Mrs. Beaumont proposed, pulling Zoe close, as Mrs. Beaumont told stories of her Christmases in France. The storm raged outside. The wind shook the trees, and the snow piled up quickly, creating drifts that reached almost to the height of the windows. At the hotel, Anya couldn't sleep. She alternated between calling Mrs. Beaumont to check on Zoe and checking the weather updates on her cell phone. Jackie, noticing his wife's distress, and sat beside her. "Anya, I know it's hard, but we need to trust that Zoe is safe. Mrs. Beaumont seems like a capable woman." Anya nodded, but the tears continued to fall. "It's just that, first we forgot her, and now this. What kind of parents are we, Jack?" Jack hugged Anya tightly. "We're parents who make mistakes, but who love their children more than anything. We'll learn from this and be better." Back at the house, Zoe and Mrs. Beaumont faced their own challenges. The cold was getting more and more intense, and they had to move closer to the fireplace, where Mrs. Beaumont managed to light a small fire. "Mrs. Beaumont," Zoe asked, her voice trembling slightly, "what if Santa can't get here with all this snow?" Mrs. Beaumont smiled gently. "Oh, my dear, Santa has special magic. No storm can stop him." As the night wore on, Zoe finally fell asleep in Mrs. Beaumont's arms, exhausted by the day's events. Mrs. Beaumont, staying vigilant, watched the dancing flames in the fireplace, silently praying that the storm would soon pass and the family would be reunited. Outside, the snow continued to fall relentlessly, covering the city with a white, silent blanket. The unexpected storm had brought challenges that no one could have foreseen, but it had also created opportunities for deeper connections and important reflections. As Christmas Eve unfolded in such an unusual way, everyone, Zoe and Mrs. Beaumont in the house, and the rest of the Miller family at the hotel, shared a common wish: that dawn would bring not only the end of the storm, but also the chance for a new beginning for all. Christmas morning dawned with a breathtaking scene. The storm had subsided, leaving behind a world transformed in white. The streets were covered by a thick layer of snow, trees bowed under the weight of ice, and an almost magical silence hung in the air. At the hotel near the airport, the Miller family woke up early, eager to return home. Anya was the first to rise, rushing to the window to assess the situation. "Jack, wake up! The storm has passed," she exclaimed, shaking her husband. Jack jumped up, joining his wife at the window. "Thank goodness," he murmured, hugging Anya. "Let's see if we can get home now." Meanwhile, at the Miller house, Zoe and Mrs. Beaumont were also waking up. The night had been challenging, with the intense cold and lack of electricity, but they had managed to stay warm and safe near the fireplace. "Good morning, ma petite." Mrs. Beaumont smiled at Zoe, who stretched under a pile of blankets. "Shall we see what the world looks like outside?" Together, they approached the living room window, gasping at the sight. The front yard had disappeared under a white blanket, and huge icicles hung from the roof. "Wow!" Zoe exclaimed, her eyes shining with excitement. "It looks like a frozen kingdom." Mrs. Beaumont laughed at the girls' enthusiasm, but her mind was already calculating the challenges they would face. "Yes, it's beautiful, but it can also be dangerous. We'll have to be very careful." At the hotel, Jack was on the phone, desperately trying to find a means of transportation. "What do you mean there are no taxis available?" "It's an emergency." Anya, meanwhile, was trying to organize the children for a possible departure. "Catherine, help Ethan get dressed. Liam, please check if we forgot anything in the rooms." Sophia, observing the commotion, asked timidly, "Mom, will we be able to get home for Christmas?" Anya knelt beside her daughter, forcing a confident smile. "We'll do our best, honey. The important thing is that we're together." Back at the house, Mrs. Beaumont and Zoe faced their own challenges. The electricity still hadn't come back on, and the inside of the house was freezing. "Mrs. Beaumont, I'm hungry," Zoe said, her stomach rumbling audibly. Mrs. Beaumont frowned thoughtfully. "Well, we can't use the stove, but maybe we can improvise something by the fireplace. How about toast and hot chocolate?" As they prepared their improvised breakfast, they heard a knock on the door. It was Mr. Thompson, the next-door neighbor. "Hello, I came to see if you're all right, he said, carrying a snow shovel. We're trying to clear the street so emergency services can get through if necessary. Mrs. Beaumont smiled gratefully. How kind of you, Mr. Thompson. We're managing, but we appreciate the help. Soon, the news that Zoe was alone with Mrs. Beaumont spread through the neighborhood. One by one, neighbors began to appear, offering help, food, and company. Mrs. Rodriguez brought a pot of hot soup. The young couple from the end of the street, the Johnsons, came with board games and extra candles. Even the grumpy Mr. Peterson showed up with his portable generator, offering to connect it to the house to provide some electricity. Zoe watched in wonder as her house filled with people, laughter, and the true Christmas spirit. Mrs. Beaumont, she whispered, is this what Christmas was like in France? Mrs. Beaumont smiled, touched. Sometimes, ma chérie, Christmas has the power to bring people together, no matter where we are. At the hotel, after hours of frustrated phone calls and fruitless attempts, Jack finally achieved a small victory. I got it, he announced to the anxious family. Her friend from the office has a Jeep with snow chains. He'll pick us up in an hour. The news was met with cheers from the children and a tight hug from Anya. As they prepared for the trip, the couple had a moment alone. Jack, Anya began, her voice trembling. I think we need to talk about some things when this is all over. Jack nodded, holding his wife's hands. I know this incident has shown us that we've lost focus on what really matters. Anya fought back tears. Our children are growing up so fast, and we're missing precious moments. Catherine shouldn't have to take on adult responsibilities. Liam shouldn't feel ignored, Sophia. And Zoe shouldn't have been forgotten, Jack finished, the guilt evident in his voice. I promise, Anya, we'll fix this. Our family comes first, always. The couple embraced, silently sealing a pact to make the necessary changes in their lives. Meanwhile, on Maple Street, the community came together in a joint effort to clear the streets. Neighbors who barely spoke to each other during the year were now working side by side, shoveling snow and spreading salt. Zoe, bundled up to her nose in borrowed coats, helped as much as she could, carrying small shovels of snow with determination. Mrs. Beaumont supervised, her heart warmed by the display of solidarity. As the afternoon progressed, the street began to take shape again. It was then that they heard the distant sound of an engine. Look, Mr. Thompson shouted, pointing down the street. It looks like someone's coming. Everyone turned to see a Jeep struggling against the snow, slowly making its way down the newly cleared street. Zoe, recognizing the vehicle, began to jump with excitement. It's them, it's my parents. The Jeep stopped in front of the Miller house, and the family hurried out. Anya was the first to reach Zoe, wrapping her in a tight hug and crying openly. Oh, ma chérie, my little one, I'm so sorry. Jack joined the hug, followed by Catherine, Liam, Sophia, and Ethan. For a moment, the world around them disappeared, and there was only the reunited family. Mrs. Beaumont watched the scene from the porch, her heart filled with joy but also with a tinge of sadness. She was preparing to discreetly go back inside when she heard Zoe's voice. Mrs. Beaumont, come here. You're part of the family now. Surprised, Mrs. Beaumont hesitated, but Anya and Jack were already approaching her, warm smiles on their faces. Please, join us, Anya said, extending her hand. We can't thank you enough for taking care of our Zoe. Jack nodded, adding, You gave us the greatest Christmas gift we could ask for. Our family is complete, thanks to you. With tears in her eyes, Mrs. Beaumont descended the porch steps and joined the family embrace. For a moment, there in the snow on Christmas morning, time seemed to stand still. It was as if the universe had conspired to create this perfect moment of unity and love. When they finally went inside, the living room filled with lively conversation and laughter. The children told Zoe about their adventure at the airport and the hotel, while Zoe excitedly recounted her slumber party with Mrs. Beaumont. Anya and Jack, sitting on the sofa with their hands intertwined, watched the scene with newfound appreciation. The chaos of the past few days had opened their eyes to what truly mattered. I'll never take our family for granted again, Anya whispered to Jack. He nodded, squeezing her hand. Me neither. I think we all learned a valuable lesson. While the children played and Mrs. Beaumont prepared more hot chocolate in the kitchen, Anya and Jack had a moment alone. "Dear Anya," Jack began, his voice serious, "I think we need to make some changes in our lives." Anya agreed, her eyes meeting her husband's. "Yes, I was thinking the same thing. Our priorities, they've become distorted over time." Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've been spending so much time at the office, missing precious moments with the children. And you've been carrying so much weight on your own. And I've been so focused on being the perfect mother that I sometimes forget to really see our children," Anya admitted. Catherine taking on too much responsibility, Liam feeling ignored, Sophia. "And Zoe being forgotten," Jack finished, guilt evident in his voice. "Yeah, we can't let this happen again." Anya took Jack's hands in hers. "Let's make a pact, here and now. Our family comes first. Always." Jack smiled, leaning in to give his wife a soft kiss. "Always," he repeated. The rest of the day passed like a dream. The Miller family, along with Mrs. Beaumont, improvised a Christmas celebration that none of them would ever forget. Without elaborate gifts or extravagant dinners, they rediscovered the true meaning of the holiday. Catherine surprised everyone by revealing that she had written a song for the family, playing it on the old piano in the living room. Liam, normally so reserved, read aloud a Christmas story he had secretly written. Sophia enchanted everyone with an impromptu violin performance, while Ethan led a game of charades that had everyone laughing until their sides hurt. Zoe, sitting on Mrs. Beaumont's lap, watched everything with shining eyes of happiness. "This is the best Christmas ever," she declared, hugging her teddy bear. As evening fell, the family gathered around the fireplace. Jack cleared his throat, getting everyone's attention. "Before we end this incredible day," he began, "Anya and I would like to say a few words." Anya stood up, taking her place beside her husband. "First, we want to apologize to all of you. We lost our way for a while, forgetting what truly matters," Jack continued. "But thanks to this incident, we've had the chance to reevaluate our priorities, and we promise that, from now on, our family will always come first." Catherine, with tears in her eyes, was the first to hug her parents. "Thank you," she whispered. "I love you." One by one, each child joined the hug, until the whole family was united in an emotional knot. Anya, still embracing her family, turned to Mrs. Beaumont. "And you, Mrs. Beaumont, we have no words to express our gratitude. We'd like to invite you to become a permanent part of our family celebrations, not just at Christmas, but whenever you like." Mrs. Beaumont, visibly moved, nodded. "It would be an honor," she replied, her voice trembling. Zoe jumped for joy. "Does that mean we can make more cookies together?" Everyone laughed, the tension of the past few days finally dissipating completely. As the night wore on and the children began to yawn, Anya and Jack exchanged a meaningful look. They had been through an ordeal, it was true, but they emerged from it stronger, more united, and with a deeper understanding of what truly mattered in life. Watching their reunited family, the soft laughter, the tired but happy smiles, they knew that this Christmas, born from chaos and mistake, had become the most precious of all. It was a new beginning, a chance to redefine not only their priorities, but the very meaning of family. And at the center of it all was Zoe, the little girl who had been forgotten, but who, in the process, had reminded everyone of the true spirit of Christmas: love, forgiveness, and the joy of being together. Anya took Jack's hands in hers. "Let's make a pact, here and now. Our family comes first. Always." Jack smiled, leaning in to give his wife a soft kiss. "Always," he repeated. The rest of the day unfolded like a dream. The Miller family, along with Mrs. Beaumont, improvised a Christmas celebration that none of them would ever forget. There were no elaborate presents or extravagant dinners, but they rediscovered the true meaning of the holiday. Catherine surprised everyone by revealing she had written a song for the family, playing it on the old piano in the living room. Liam, usually so reserved, read aloud a Christmas story he had secretly written. Sophia enchanted everyone with an impromptu violin performance, while Ethan led a game of charades that had everyone laughing until their sides ached. Zoe, nestled on Mrs. Beaumont's lap, watched everything with sparkling eyes, filled with happiness. "This is the best Christmas ever," she declared, hugging her teddy bear. As the evening drew closer, the family gathered around the warm glow of the fireplace. Jack cleared his throat, capturing everyone's attention. "Before we bring this incredible day to a close," he began, "Anya and I wanted to share a few words." Anya stood beside her husband. "First, we want to apologize. To all of you. We lost our way for a bit, forgetting what truly matters," Jack continued. "But because of this incident, we were given a chance to reevaluate our priorities, and we promise that from this day forward, our family will always come first." Catherine, tears welling in her eyes, was the first to embrace her parents. "Thank you," she whispered. "I love you." One by one, each child joined the hug, until the entire family was entwined in a heartwarming embrace. Anya, still holding her family close, turned to Mrs. Beaumont. "And to you, Mrs. Beaumont, words can't express how grateful we are. We'd like to invite you to be a permanent part of our family celebrations. Not just for Christmas, but any time you'd like." Mrs. Beaumont, visibly moved, nodded. "It would be an honor," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. Zoe jumped up and down with glee. "Does that mean we can bake more cookies together?" Everyone laughed, the lingering tension from the past few days finally melting away completely. As the night deepened and the children began to yawn, Anya and Jack shared a knowing glance. They had weathered a difficult storm, but they had emerged stronger, closer, and with a profound understanding of what was truly important. Looking at their family gathered together, the soft laughter, the tired but happy smiles, they knew that this Christmas, born from a mistake and a near disaster, had become their most cherished one. It was a fresh start, an opportunity to redefine not just their priorities, but the very essence of family. And at the heart of it all was Zoe, the little girl who had been forgotten but who, in the process, had reminded them all of the true spirit of Christmas: love, forgiveness, and the joy of simply being together. As the last embers in the fireplace crackled and the snow continued to fall softly outside, the Miller house wasn't filled with expensive gifts or elaborate decorations, but with something far more valuable: the warmth of family love, the strength of renewed bonds, and the promise of a future where every moment would be treasured and celebrated. This wasn't just the end of an unusual Christmas, but the beginning of a new journey for the Miller family, a journey of love, understanding, and above all, of never again taking each other for granted.